boys and girls and all of the theys, come with us to hear something strange.
On this podcast, you will hear a dark tale that many still fear.
Welcome to our Halloween 2021 episode. It's Halloween! Literally!
Spooky time!
Because this is airing on Halloween.
Dun, dun, dun!
Dun!
I'm Ash.
I'm Al.
We are Lovey Cosplay.
And this is the Halloween 2021 episode of Shit Cosplayers Say. At the time of this recording, I just completed my Oogie Boogie photo shoot with Honey and Ether Photography a couple days ago.
Gosh, we've done so much. We hung out with Food and Cosplay.
Yes, that was a good time. We talked about our fantasy cosplay competition.
Yes.
So if we could design...
And custard.
If we could design our ideal cosplay competition, what would it look like?
With all the money in the world.
With all the money in the world. We probably could have gone bigger.
I mean, we could have. I was not given the full parameters of this exercise. I actually had 100% something completely different written up before we went into it, so that's okay.
That's
it was
okay.
Good.
That's
it was
okay.
a fun time, and I enjoyed the dreaming.
Yes. Definitely go check out Ed Talks About and Food and Cosplay.
Yeah, it's a good time. We also had to bond over the fact that his podcast is called Ed Talks About, and ours is Shit Cosplayers Say, and it's just like, huh.
Except that Ed never gets to talk about anything.
No, because we have to take over the podcast. I mean, the world.
The world.
Pinky.
Wrong.
Let's take over the world. Wrong.
Wrong.
Yes. Good times. Good times were had by all.
It's good times are had by all. If you listened to our last episode, you probably got your earful of our executive producer.
Yes. He's currently behind me, so you may or may not hear him again.
So I have something for our executive producer so he can feel more included in our process.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, goodness. I can't wait.
We have baby's first microphone.
Oh my goodness.
For our executive producer. So obviously this is not a video podcast. I'll post a picture of it. But it is a microphone that lights up and plays music. There is a rattle on the bottom, and then the top is soft.
Excellent.
So now he has his own microphone.
Good.
I feel like we need to make like a tiny pop filter that goes with this so that
That's
he can
hysterical.
have baby's first pop filter.
I love it.
Because that doesn't exist. I wish it did, but it doesn't. So maybe we need to make like a little stuffed ring that goes with it as baby's first pop filter. But now he has his own microphone, and then when he gets bigger, we can get him one of those Echo microphones that we all had when we were little that like amplify your voice.
Please. Please.
So
I love it.
So now
That's
he has
awesome.
baby's first microphone, which he'll get later today because after we're done recording, then we're getting together to do things.
And we're gonna eat sushi.
And
it's
eat
gonna be
sushi.
awesome. Yes.
Yes.
All right. Should we delve into this?
Yeah, we should. So for our extra spooky Halloween episode, we are going to tell you a tale. A tale about an extra hour. An event that is the definition of if it can go wrong, it will go wrong.
I really wish like the lightning and thunder had just cracked in the background. That would have been really fun and great timing because it's definitely raining and lightning and thundering here.
Maybe I can find a file and I can put it in.
Good. I love it.
So we are going to talk about one of the most infamous conventions of all time.
Yes.
Is this con goes down in infamy for being one of the most disorganized, out of control, if it can go wrong events in existence.
Yeah, this is completely wild, and until we started delving back into this, I kind of had forgotten about a lot of it.
Yeah, because it's been a while since anyone's really brought up this convention, because it was quite a long time ago.
I actually found a really recent article about it, which kind of surprised me.
Oh, good. Good.
But yeah.
So this is the tale of the Tumblr convention gone wrong. The convention known as DashCon. So what is DashCon? Well, it was a fandom convention held in July of 2014 that focused on Tumblr and was held in Schaumburg, Illinois. So Tumblr kind of exists still, but it's not nearly at the height of popularity as it was in 2014, obviously.
Well, yeah, it's one of those platforms that was super popular, and then I think it has to do a lot with what you see with a lot of the other socials that have kind of come and gone, where investors got involved and like dollars got directed based on what the investors wanted and not what the actual users wanted. So they started taking out adult content or saying that they were going to restrict it in certain fashions, and a lot of people just jump ship.
So basically what it is, it's like micro blogging. So it's like really, really short blog posts. And it started in 2007. In 2014, like Tumblr was still massive. It was a huge fandom outlet. There was a lot of fan art. Like that was kind of Tumblr's really big thing, was like fan art. And then it kind of died later, as Ash mentioned, but it was the thing back in 2014. Yes. Like, we didn't have Instagram. We didn't have, like, some of these other ones that are popular now. There was no TikTok, to my knowledge, yet. Because musically, I don't think it existed yet in 2014.
Or it wasn't nearly as popular as it got later.
Right. So Tumblr was, like, the thing. You saw everybody had a Tumblr that was just the way.
Microblogging, fan art, fan fiction, cosplay, like anything like really heavy into fandom based. There was typically both like group Tumblrs about, and like everybody had their own.
Yeah.
Like LiveJournal back in the day.
Yes. So it was kind of like the evolution of LiveJournal for those of you that are, 30 plus. You may remember the emo invoking platform known as LiveJournal, where everyone had to like spill their deep darkest secrets or write in code so the boy who they liked would know but not know, and kind of like aim away messages where you left like
cringy
emo song quotes in your away message on AIM.
So cringy. Yeah, that was a thing.
High school, early 2000s.
My goodness. Well. Yeah, looking back at like my first days on the internet, like back in like middle school, high school, it was just like, oh god.
MySpace.
That's its own horror story right there.
Right. For another time. So, DashCon was pretty much like any other con. It was a 3-day con, Friday through Sunday. They promised all good things fandom. Lots of events, game rooms, activities. They were scheduled to have a live show from the podcast Welcome to Night Vale. They were supposed to have like music guests and voice actors and all these awesome things, right?
Yes.
Well, it didn't take long for things to start to go wrong. So
not at a con.
Even before the convention started, things started to go wrong. Like, attendees got there and the Wi-Fi in the hotel just wasn't working.
I mean,
Which is pretty normal. you know.
Yeah. I don't remember having great Wi-Fi in any hotel back in 2014 unless you paid for it like individually. So, and even then it was
So like what I kind of read was some of the main complaints was just that this was really poorly planned and organized.
I think from what I've seen is this is one of those cases of having way too many cooks in the kitchen. So the article I was talking about, I read one from right around the time that the con happened with two of the organizers, and then the one from just a couple months ago was actually one of the people that kind of founded the concept of it for their original like blog that turned into the DashCon blog for them to have this event. And it was supposed to be like there were committees for each fandom, and we had very little involved in this, we'll tell you towards the end, with one of the particular tracks. So each fandom was supposed to have its own track of programming and their own like space within the event, to run panels, have booths, whatever, for meetups, cosplay, what have you. But then they started with like maybe 22 of these individual committees, and then and they had, you know, maybe 5 to 10 people on each one. Now, of course, through attrition, like
that sounds like a nightmare.
Like, stuff happened, and by the time the con actually came around, there were maybe only like 6. But then they also had their administrative team, which in the beginning was large, and then, you know, people came and went as they do. But it seemed like they had a high turnover there too, minus some of the like founding organizers of the actual business entity of DashCon. And there was a lot of people, and it sounds like they weren't necessarily experienced in either attending or running conventions, which
double whammy.
Obviously, double whammy, or at least not all of them were.
Right.
So I think that there was a lot of people kind of in over their heads on things.
Because one of the big mistakes that they made was they had somehow come up with a number in their head that they were going to have between 3,000 and 7,000 people, and then they ended up with like 500 to 1,000 people. And even in an area like Schaumburg, which is right outside of Chicago, Illinois, any first-year con's not going to be massive. Like 7,000, no con starts at 7,000. Like, that's just not, especially when it's very niche like this.
Yes.
Because this is a very niche concept, and so the more specific a convention is, the harder it is for them to increase their attendance.
Well, and if you look at this, too, this was 7 years ago.
Exactly.
And fandom cons existed, but they hadn't really blown up into the mainstream like they did in the late, 2010s, where you saw a lot of these, reality TV shows and network television picking up stuff that had to do with fandom and cosplay. That just wasn't a thing.
You also have to consider the age group that used Tumblr, which was primarily teenagers and early college.
Yes.
So people that don't have money.
Well, and their tickets weren't necessarily, inexpensive.
Right.
So, their at-the-door weekend badges were $80, not including a concert ticket. And not including Night Vale seats.
Right, because for all that extra entertainment, you had to pay on top of your badge price.
Yep.
There was their big oopsie right there, was banking on the fact that they were basically going to make what a con might get in 5 or 6 years, as opposed to their first year.
Yeah. Well, and they posted copies of their final invoices, or not necessarily final invoice, but I think it was their final contract at the end of the event with all their monies paid. And I'm like, why would you plan a first year con that's going to cost you this much money?
Yes, because my understanding is they overextended themselves too, as far as the cost.
If I remember correctly, it was $43,000 for a first year con.
For a first year con, that's a bit much. Well, because the hotel is also banking that you're going to sell X amount of rooms, but then if you didn't, you've got that issue too. So,
yes.
Then you've got more money that you owe because your room block didn't sell out. And it's very complicated to run a convention. I don't think people realize how complicated the process is.
And a lot of conventions that I've staffed for or volunteered with in the past, the money owed by the con is directly related to the number of room nights that they sell in the room block.
Right.
So, I mean, I've worked for some cons that if you reached a certain number of rooms in the block, you didn't have to pay event fees.
Right.
And then, but if you didn't, it was going to be this much. Or if you reached this percentage, it was going to be this much.
Well, and that's another thing to consider with, like, Chicago conventions, for instance. A lot of won't get a room. They commute.
Well, yeah, I mean, public transportation up there between the Metro and the L.
So when you have a small con in that area, it's even harder to, like, sell out of your room block because people may just go home and come back the next day, especially if the convention doesn't go all night, which my understanding was this one did not. It did kind of like the Comic-Con where you were done at like 10 p.m. kind of deal.
Well, and you think another thing, too, is looking at the particular hotel that they picked. I would not have picked this particular hotel for first-year con because it was one of the upper scale Marriott hotels.
Right, and this hotel had very little experience with conventions.
It was not, well, it just wasn't a budget hotel.
No, so it was an expensive hotel.
Not only do you not have experience running cons here at this particular location, which has its own nuances, I'm sure there's a reason why a lot of cons in Chicago area are all held at the same hotel.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, it's just for a brand new con with no money, like this sounds like a very expensive hotel to have an event at.
Well, and then you have to, again, consider your demographic.
Mm-hmm.
So teenagers, first of all, can't rent a hotel room on their own. Second, are they going to be able to afford those expensive hotel rooms? So what are they going to do? They're going to drive back and forth from home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're either going to have to bring a parent, like we did when we were teenagers, so that somebody could rent the room, or they're just going to drive back and forth because typically, this being a first-year convention, I would assume most of the people were local.
Right.
Which is still true of most Chicago conventions in general. You're still going to have a larger population that's local than not, even with the big cons. Because it's just, that's how conventions work. Typically, you're going to have more local people than anything else. But this got worse. You know, already we've got this hot mess where things are, because of the lack of communication between departments, we've got some organizational hot messes. You know, people are having trouble finding things. The game room turned out to be like a TV and a console as opposed to like an actual game room. Like, things are just a bit chaotic to begin with, but people are still having a good time. So,
well, I mean, it is a con, and one thing con goers know how to do is to overcome, adapt, and make the best out of situations.
Yeah, they'll find a way. So, you know, they're all still having a good time, and you know, from a lot of the articles I saw, people were still like, yeah, it was chaos, but we still had fun. So, you know, people were still enjoying themselves. But on Friday night, July 11th at 9 p.m., what DashCon is infamous for happened. And when I read this, I kept thinking of, like, the intro to Rent.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the, like, Friday, July 11th, 9 p.m., Eastern Standard Time. That. But this was Central Standard Time, because we're in Chicago.
And not New York.
And not New York. Okay, so around 9 p.m. on Friday, July 11th, this post appeared on Twitter. And this is the actual post that appeared on Twitter. I found it in multiple sources, so we're going to go with it being the legit one. Because obviously it's disappeared because they deleted it afterward. Hello, DashCon. Please help. Upper management of the hotel is threatening to shut down DashCon unless we give them $17,000 by 10 p.m. Central Time tonight. Please go to dashcon.org and click the donate button and give her anything you can. Unless we get this by tonight, everything is canceled. We suspect it's due to the fact that upper management doesn't like people at the con. Please donate what you can. Thank you. We have an hour.
Everything is canceled.
Everything is canceled. From what I could gather, and I know Ashley looked into some of the things that occurred with this as well.
Yes.
It appears that the hotel kind of agreed to pay in installments, and then when they saw that, like, no one was coming to this convention, they were like, oh my god, I need my money now. From, like, what I could find. Because as they saw no tickets being sold and no rooms being rented, they realized they were pretty unlikely to get their money. Which is fair on the cons part. Now, I have no idea what their, contract was with this convention, word for word. But, I feel like the hotel not requiring the money up front, or at least partially up front, was probably not a great decision on their part with a first-year convention.
I really enjoy the Wayback Machine, where you can actually go and see, like, archive posts that used to be on the internet. So I did look into, like, the official statement that was put out by the convention immediately after. I think it was, like, within a week of when this happened. So according to them, they posted a screenshot showing that $21,000 had been paid prior to the event. According to that person, the contract stipulations, about $7,000 of that was actually due, but had not been paid yet. The other 10 was for services rendered at the event, for things that, not just the base hotel price, but stuff that they were going to incur over the course of the week. There also seemed to be a lot of insinuating that one particular admin or owner was the cause of all the chaos.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Because in the early posts, you'll see a lot, like 3 names thrown around a lot, and then you'll see 2 names thrown around a lot afterwards, as far as people that are talking about it, and they talk about this person that was fired, but they never come out and name names, which, I mean, it's especially with what happened after the con, I don't blame them, because you don't want to, put a target on this person's back.
Right.
But allegedly, a lot of this information came directly from that one person, whoever that person may happen to be, about the hotel not liking them demanding their money by 10 o'clock or everything's going to be canceled. And, I mean, conventions and convention goers have experienced this kind of discrimination in the past, so it's not unfathomable for this to have happened.
No.
But everybody took this person on their staff's word at face value and ran with it, and then the chaos ensued. Apparently, later, it was discovered that no such things were ever said by the hotel itself. The hotel, like a lot of them do once they warm up, absolutely loved the attendees and the vibes that they gave off, which, again, we're known for having a good time and making the most out of crap situations. Whoever was in charge of the contract apparently didn't know what net 30 meant and poorly explained it to the rest of the staff. A lot of staff members did not read the contract prior to signing. And then they just took for face value what they were told something means. I'm assuming without the aid of an accountant or a lawyer.
Yeah, because throughout all of this, I was wondering, like, did you guys not retain a lawyer?
Well, it sounds like they did at some point, but
okay.
Originally, no, it doesn't. Just from what I've gathered, it does not sound like originally there was a lawyer involved.
So they kind of tried to do their contracts on their own kind of deal?
Yeah, and whoever was in charge of it, they thought, for whatever reason, this person was qualified to handle this. They, threw out what appeared to be a reasonable explanation, but it really wasn't.
Okay.
Could just be another side. I mean, obviously, this is all speculation because we don't actually have a real payment history, and we don't have an official, in-writing statement from any of the people actually involved.
Well, because it just sounds like the communication in general was poor. So there were a lot of, verbal things that were said, but not, documented anywhere or not given to the right people.
And that also sounds like where part of this other stuff came from, too. Any contract I've read has stipulations for exactly when payments are due.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a thing. It's a standard contract. And my understanding is that they had a very standard contract with so much due, 30 days prior to probably upon signing, so many days prior to the event. Possibly there will be a deadline at the beginning of the event. And then typically you have so many, days or whatever after the conclusion of the event for any ad-con sort of expenditures. So it sounds like a lot of side conversations were had possibly with this mysterious staff member that dealt with the contract, where a lot of verbal agreements were made that were not documented. So it sounds like anything that the hotel asked was well within their rights as a venue in terms of what that contract actually stated.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
but
it's
miscommunication.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of what happens when there's poor communication. Because nobody's communicating with each other and no one has the full understanding of what's happening, and so then you end up with chaos.
Yes, so much chaos.
Well, and the chaos got worse because remember how we talked about these extra paid events, right? Well, they lost those.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Welcome to Night Vale dropped out of the event. So
in the middle of it, they did their Friday session and then just didn't show up Saturday.
So I know that podcast isn't as big as it used to be, but Welcome to Night Vale is about this fictional town called Night Vale where all these weird things happen. It's a lot of fun if you haven't listened to it yet, but in 2014 they were huge.
Yes, it was the thing.
Yeah, they were. That's the whole like all hail the glow cloud and all of that kind of thing. They were the thing. And my understanding is they put on a really great live show. So they were supposed to do a live show on Saturday.
Yeah, I think they were actually touring.
Yes, they were touring.
Across the country at this point.
So they were supposed to do a live show on Saturday. And they had to drop out. And they left a statement that I believe you found, Ash.
So I found a couple different things. They had some stuff that came out from the organizers directly. There was some stuff that was posted by Night Vale. There were other things that were like copied and pasted from emails to show communications. And he wants to tell you all about it. Thank you so much for contributing.
I can't handle it.
Yeah. Really? So,
do you have opinions about Welcome to Night Vale?
Do you have opinions about DashCon?
You do?
Oh my goodness. So there's a lot of kind of weird stuff that I noticed in the Night Vale. So originally it sounds like they had a contract that said that they were going to pay an appearance fee, travel expenses, and, hotel. I'm assuming that their original contract probably stated they were going to stay at the host hotel because that makes the most sense.
Right.
But because they were on tour, they wanted to book their own flights because they didn't know exactly where they were going to be at the time that the contract was written up. So they wanted to book their own flights. They also stated that they had their own connections in Chicago and wanted to choose their own lodging. I guess their lodging amount came back to be like $2,300.
Where did they stay?
That's the real question. So I don't know exactly what it was. So it was more than they had budgeted, obviously, because
because
we're planning on them staying at the Con Hotel under the
Con
block.
Okay, so they could have stayed somewhere like the Marriott Marquis for McCormick Place. If you don't get in the room block, is $400 a night plus taxes.
Well, and I think they never specifically stated. I couldn't find anything saying exactly where they stayed, other than the fact that it was downtown Chicago.
Oh, well, yeah, anything downtown Chicago is $400 a night.
Right. So I don't know if it was an upscale hotel or an Airbnb or but they quoted their pricing as being, it was like almost $900 for the plane tickets, like $2,300 for the room. So they negotiated because obviously the con was only planning on paying X amount.
Right.
And yeah, so they were supposed to be paid upon arrival at the event. For whatever reason, they couldn't meet together on Friday. And, and then all the chaos happened. I think they had their Q&A maybe Friday night.
Yeah.
And then, so the chaos happened Friday night, and they got worried. Understandably so. I mean, if you look at all the chaos that's going on. So they send an email, and again, it sounds like this mysterious staff member that they keep throwing under the bus, read the email and sent back a kind of just like short, almost curt email response saying that the money would be available, but they didn't relay that to anybody else. we're back to this lack of communication again. So Night Vale wanted a cashier's check for the remainder of their amount due.
Totally fair.
Which is totally fair, because my understanding is they should have been paid at the start of the event. Whatever happened with that happened. They requested to be paid before their reading, and that didn't happen.
Right.
I mean, and frankly, I think unless it was stipulated ahead of time, having a cashier's check that short notice might not necessarily be feasible.
Right.
Because it depends on where their bank is for the event. And it's also our executive producer does not like the placement.
The pop filter. Friend, you can't have it. You cannot have it right now.
But if they're wanting a cashier's check by like 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, depending on where the bank is for them to get these funds, that might not be a feasible request if they're not requesting it until super late Friday night. You tell us all about it.
I can't handle him this morning. He is just
you
so
tell us
chatty.
all about it.
He needs us to know.
So at the event, they had cash, and the rest of it was available in their PayPal from the aforementioned $17,000 chaos. So they had the money in PayPal, but they couldn't release it for whatever reason. And since they were not paid in full, they left and they didn't do the reading.
I mean, I don't blame them, honestly, as performers. Like, if there's a high probability the event isn't going to give you what they originally promised you, you have the right to walk out because they broke your contract.
Right. I mean, at that point, they're just trying to cut their losses and not do more unpaid work.
Exactly.
I know that some of the guests, their hotel rooms actually like dropped out of the block in the middle of the weekend.
Yes.
They got notification like in the middle of the weekend that instead of just being responsible for incidentals, they were also going to be responsible for the full room amount. Con staff claimed that it was a clerical error by the hotel and remedied it at the hotel.
It could have been. We've had that happen before, where our hotel room is not available as guests.
It was, I mean, and it, you know, the con fixes it, whatever. There was a lot of people saying that talent hadn't been paid come the weekend. Well, depending on their contract again, some contracts will stipulate beforehand.
Right.
Some contracts will stipulate at the beginning of the event, and some contracts will stipulate at the end of the event. Without actually reading the contract provisions, that might not be abnormal.
Right.
I do know that as of their official statement posted afterwards, there were volunteers and panelists that were still waiting for some of their compensation for room and badges. But they claimed that was being taken care of shortly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whatever happened with that.
Well, and they did end up raising the $17,000.
I think only a little bit of it was in cash. The rest of it was through PayPal donations.
Yeah, most of it was through PayPal. So they did say that those that paid through PayPal could receive a refund, but we don't actually know if they ever did.
I never really saw anything that popped up like large groups of people claiming they never got their money.
Well, yeah, so I would assume people would have complained if they hadn't gotten their money.
I mean,
so
they
there would have
about
been
everything else on the internet. So
right, there would have been some big to do. I would think if they hadn't gotten it.
Yeah.
You know, the cash obviously was much harder to refund because there's no receipts for it, like a PayPal.
Well, and they did have, I know, like an email set up that for up to a week after the event, you could submit a request for a refund for your cash paid. And what they were going to do was look at the cash donations and compare it to the amount of cash that people said that they had donated.
Yeah, to see if the math comes out right.
Yeah, to see if the math comes out right, and that if the math came out okay, that they were going to go ahead and honor those.
Right. So, about a week after this whole thing ended, there was a little bit more explanation. So, we talked a little bit about what happened with Night Vale already. So, the other thing, though, that I feel like one of the other reasons they probably pulled out was because they charged, like, money per seat for the Welcome to Night Vale live show that was happening on Saturday. So Night Vale's like, well, if you're not going to pay me, I'm not going to make money for you. Like, that just makes sense, you know?
Yeah, because the seats were $10 for each event, or you could buy a combo ticket for both for $15.
there was a clause that did upset people, and I did find this online that people complained about this, was that there was a clause for the Welcome to Night Vale and other additional event tickets that, regardless of situation, they would not be refunded.
I did see in their official statement, though, they confirmed that that rule was changed in the middle of the event.
It was.
Originally, it just said that they weren't going to refund badges. But they also had a rule that said that DashCon reserves the right to change the rules at any time. So they,
when they saw this happening, they went back in and changed the rule.
I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like. It sounds super, super shady.
There was, because I found a lot of trolling on this one, where they just were like, sorry, you paid for all these extra events, but we're just not giving them to you. We will tell you what they gave them later.
Yeah, well,
as
and then
compensation.
They had, some weird BS reasoning, in my opinion. It said that even though the reading didn't happen, that refunding tickets for the event would call into question the validity and enforceability of any of their other rules. And
yes.
I'm no.
No.
I don't think so.
That's not how that works.
There's a really big difference between somebody saying they want a refund because they didn't show up at the con or they decided to go to a different panel or whatever versus the, person that they're supposed to see not physically being present on grounds. Those are black and white issues. Right.
If you can change the rules at any time, you can also change that rule.
Absolutely.
But obviously they wanted to be able to pay some of their debt off, so they didn't want to, refund it. Because legally, what did happen with this convention?
Well, I think first I want to just touch on some other, the aftermath stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff that I thought
We've
was
got a few more aftermath things in here, don't we?
So, obviously, the internet being the internet, people went wild.
Oh,
after
yes.
This.
Twitter was a buzz.
There were a lot of staff involved, including minors, that received harsh criticism from the fallout of this event. A lot of the people who are the critics, just like any other thing that happens in the world of pop culture, didn't actually appear at this event. They didn't buy badges for the event.
Oh, of
they
course
probably
not.
weren't even in the city of Schaumburg at the time that this happened. But you have minor children receiving death threats. I have a problem with that.
Right.
Grow up. This is a con. This is not worth you threatening to kill a kid. That's not okay.
No, it's not.
One of the original girls that started kind of the concept of it had to go to therapy afterwards because she was receiving death threats. She was 15 when she first started the idea of having a Tumblr con. And she was still a minor at the time of the event. Yeah, not okay. As far as the legality goes, I couldn't find that any criminal or civil suits were ever filed. It just sounds like this was just kind of a, like you said, the lack of communication and if it can go wrong, it will go wrong shit show. So after everything was done, DashCon LLP, which was based out of Ohio, they had thousands of dollars left in debt. So they decided to dissolve. Originally, they were planning on hosting a 2015 con because of all this. Well, they did receive a lot of support from the people that actually attended and other members of the community afterwards. But for mostly, I'm assuming monetary reasons, they decided to go ahead and dissolve DashCon LLP. So they were liquidating assets and they were going to pay all of their remaining contracts off pro rata, which is prorated. So based on how much money they could get from liquidating assets, they do that a lot with bankruptcies. They'll liquidate your assets, and then depending on their percentage of the pie of how much money you owe, then that's the percentage of the pie of what funds are available that you're going to get. So they were going to go ahead and do that as part of the dissolution process. Now, 2 of the 3 people that were head administrators for DashCon then went on to create an event called Emoticon, which was supposed to be another Tumblr convention. But my understanding is that never actually got off the ground.
No, that one didn't happen.
Yeah, they did form another company called So Attacked Entertainment LLC, but they never actually ended up having emoticons. So, like, I mean, I know why people say that DashCon changed its name to Emoticon, because it's the same people involved. From a legal standpoint, that's not really what happened.
Right.
But yeah. But on to the best part of the
my
weekend.
favorite part. So
let's talk about the ball pit.
Yes. So the thing this convention is best known for is that picture of that extremely sad, like, deflated baby pool with plastic ball pit balls in it. Like, that's in, like, that big empty room. That's what this convention is best known for. So where did the ball pit come from?
Well, initially, before we get into what it's best known for, as far as the ball pit goes, apparently there's a meme or, like, a Tumblr post that talks about strangers sit together and meet new people in a ball pit.
Yes, that was the advertisement for the ball pit.
Yeah, so, like, that was something that one of the organizers had seen on Tumblr and was like, this is a great plan. And it just reminds me of, like, when we go to a Kalahari and all the cosplayers are hanging out in the hot tub together.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, like, a bad idea in its, like, initial conception.
It was poor execution.
It just was executed very poorly.
Well, and apparently they totally throw the name of the company under the bus.
Oh yeah,
as far as who they rented it from. They're like, this was not the picture that they showed us online.
Yeah.
Like, this was, and they said that they could accommodate a ball pit for adults.
So
and this was not a thing.
They thought they were getting one of those cool, like, big inflated ball pits that, like, Colossal Cons had them before, where they've had, like, the giant bouncy house and the giant ball pit and stuff. Like, that's what they thought they were getting, but that is definitely not what they got. And apparently, like, the main organizer had never even seen the ball pit, so they had no idea that the ball pit wasn't what they thought it was, which just makes the next part of this even better, because the person that offered this compensation thought they had adult ball pit when really they had this, like, hot mess.
Yes.
Because the ball pit is most infamous for being offered as an accommodation for the loss of those paid-for live shows.
Yes.
The convention offered an extra hour in the ball pit.
Yeah.
The person who offered this thought they had what they ordered, so the big adult ball pit. They did not realize that they had this little deflated, like, sad ball pit.
Yeah. Well, in their, like, defense, that's not the only thing that they offered these people.
No.
But that's just what it's most known for. So,
yes.
For those of you that are like, I can't believe that they offered time in a kiddie pool that somebody probably peed in, like, as compensation for these, like, $5 to $10 tickets that people had. They had a couple of raffles that they were doing for people. They had, like, framed Stan Lee autograph and Richard Armitage autograph. They had a framed Walking Dead photo with cast autographs. Mark Freeman. So many cool prizes, is what they said. With 2 exclamation points.
So cool!
Two exclamation points. They also got first come, first serve seating at the concert for Saturday night. For any of the extra room that they had. So if you hadn't purchased a concert ticket to that, they were giving first come, first serve to people that had the Nightville tickets for Saturday. And then anybody that came and bought a Saturday only badge was given a free Sunday badge. So if you didn't buy a weekend pass, you got a Sunday for free, even if you weren't planning on going.
I mean, they tried. I guess.
I mean, they worked with what they had. But yeah,
but the memes.
The memes.
Oh, the memes from the ball pit are some of the greatest things to ever grace the internet, honestly.
I mean, we used the ball pit in one of our skits.
We did. We did. Yes. I mean, it will go down in infamy. You still see the picture of, like, the famous picture. The sad ball pit picture.
Sad ball pit, like, half deflated. Yeah.
Like, a couple times a year, and it just comes across, and you're just like, oh, look. It's the DashCon ball pit.
The people that were actually, like, in charge of it, though, they're like, we fully encourage and support this meme.
Right. Because, no, they were all about the memes.
Yeah, like, let's make some humor out of this, like, totally terrible situation.
And then there were the costumes of the ball pit that also came afterward, which were amazing.
Absolutely.
Because there were many, many costumes of the ball pit that occurred. Conventions have played off of this for years, where they'll have ball pits and be like, look, an extra hour, just as like a joke. And it's still going this many years later.
That they even got invited to like Gen Con or somewhere to set up a traveling ball pit.
I think
like,
they did, yeah.
And like, because I think they went to Gen Con that year, like right after, and set up the quote unquote DashCon traveling ball pit.
The DashCon ball pit.
For funsies. I mean,
right?
Why not?
Because honestly, with what they got, it probably would have cost them less to buy it than it did for them to rent it. It was so sad.
It could
like,
be.
Even if you had ordered a child's ball pit, that ball pit was still really sad.
I know. So where do we fit into all of this?
Oh God. Yeah, we almost went to DashCon.
We almost went to DashCon. Well, I almost went to DashCon.
I wasn't allowed, apparently.
Yeah. So, somebody that we knew was friends. I don't know if this is in real life or on Tumblr. With whoever was running the cosplay track, and we got, invited to send our information to request to be judges for their costume contest, which was not craftsmanship based. It was legitimately just a show up in cosplay contest. And her and I got accepted, but Elle was told she was not qualified.
Yeah. Because apparently at that time I didn't have enough sewing experience to be qualified to judge a competition that had nothing to do with sewing.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
But needless to say, we're like, we're not doing this.
Bullet dodged.
Bullet dodged.
Bullet dodged. Although I think it would have been really funny to have witnessed that chaos.
I know. I was a little sad afterwards. I'm really glad that we dodged this bullet, but at the same time, can you imagine having a first-hand account?
We would have had an amazing story of the first-hand account of DashCon.
Right?
That would have been great. But what should we take away from this tale of horror?
If it can go wrong,
it will go wrong. I mean,
communication is key.
Yep.
Anytime we've said if it can go wrong or it will go wrong, our Better Together cosplay group survival guide, I feel like a lot of the adulting things out of that episode are relevant here.
It's just, running a con is a lot harder than it looks.
Yes, just like running a contest is much harder than it looks. Can you imagine if we've said that running a contest is hard, how much more difficult it is to run an entire convention?
Well, and a lot of people jump in head first into running a convention because they're like, I love conventions, I can do this. And they don't realize all of the things that go into you're running a business. All those little nuances that go into putting on an event of that size.
Right, absolutely. Especially if you're hoping for, let's say 5,000 people on your first go.
Right. I mean, there's just so many logistics and organizational processes and legal processes that you have to take into consideration even before you start looking at talent and entertainment.
Yeah.
For your event. And a lot of times, people see other events in the area and they're like, oh, well, we can get XYZ amount of people and this will be great. Or they don't pay attention to other events in the area, which is what I see more often, particularly in smaller areas, where they're not doing their market research first.
Yeah.
And being aware of what the price point is for the market, being aware of the demographic for the market. And
I think that's one of the crazy things about this too, because they actually hired an event company.
Did they really?
Them. Yeah. Well, because I want to say one of the main founders lives in Ohio.
They should be fired, that event company. They did a bad job.
I'm sure that they probably did. But yeah, that's who got them in contact with this particular hotel and stuff. It was just what?
I see this a lot with new conventions where they jump in head first, they get going, and they don't bother to do their market research about everything else that's going on in the same area. Yeah. It's they put blinders on to the rest of the area and they're just I want to run a con here. Not, paying attention to the fact that maybe there's already 4 cons at that exact same time or 7 conventions in that same area in 3 months or whatever. And maybe this isn't the best place or the best time to run your convention. And that really should be step 1. is do the research for the market, for the area, and for the topic that you are going to be presenting a convention for before you jump into, renting space and picking when you're going to have it, because that's been like the main reason I've seen a lot of cons fail.
Yeah.
Is they're not paying attention to the market around them in the area that they're planning the convention.
Right. But yeah, so there you have it, folks. We'll have lots of links for you. And
yes, we'll put all of our references in the notes section of the episode, so that if you want to read further into some of these articles that we read, take a deeper dive into DashCon, you'll be able to do so.
Yeah, so we hope you had a nice spoopy Halloween.
Yes.
Yes. I'm Ash.
I'm Elle.
We are Lobby Cosplay.
And this is Shit Cosplayers Say. Ooh. You've been listening to Shit Cosplayers Say, an LVC production. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Podcast SCS. Our website is lavicosplay.com. Have a fun, crazy con or cosplay-related story, absurd cosplay question, or just something in general to share with us? Email us at podcastscs@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and remember, just because you can doesn't mean you should.